What's going on, you guys? So, since I'm doing all this work in the back of the car, I've been working on the cooling system, the chassis, all that stuff, and I'm sure a lot of people have heard that puller fans are more efficient than pusher fans, and there's benefits to doing a puller instead of a pusher. A lot of people just hear that, but they don't actually know why. So I figured I would talk about some of the key points to why puller fans are better than pusher fans. So let's start out pretending that this is a pusher setup, and this is just blowing air. It's pulling air this way and blowing it straight through. Well, say for example, this is mounted on the front of your vehicle. All this area here, everything on the shroud, is basically blocking clean airflow into the radiator. Now, I know on a rear setup, that's not nearly as important, but it is a very important key thing on a front mounted radiator setup, is that your shroud, if you have a pusher fan and this is on the front of your radiator, you have a lot of surface area here that's blocking airflow. Now, on top of that, with this being a pusher, you're basically forcing air through here, and it's going in a direct path. So you're gonna get all kinds of turbulent air buildup inside the shroud, and you're not gonna get exactly the best airflow through it. It's gonna have some turbulent air. Some spots of the radiator will get better flow than others, and with a puller setup, that doesn't really happen as bad. Now with a puller setup though, a shroud is very important. You want to have the shroud cover the entire radiator. So you can see on mine it comes all the way up, but I do have this little gap here. So this gap, I'm actually just going to tape and seal it off. Even on spots like here where it actually meets the radiator perfectly, I still like to tape that stuff off and get like a perfect seal on it. Now the reason you want to have a good seal on it, imagine trying to drink through a straw that has a hole in it. So you're going to be pulling air into that hole. So this is going to create low pressure in the shroud, and if you have a gap here, that's going to pull air in through here instead of through here. So with this sealed off, any of that air that would be coming in here and having that pressure exchange is going to go right through the radiator instead of any of the little creases and gaps. So you want to make sure it's sealed off really well because of that. Now on top of that, once it's all sealed with a puller setup, this entire shroud becomes a low pressure area over the entire surface of the radiator. So on the back side of the whole surface of the radiator is going to be lower pressure than the front. And what that's going to do is allow clean airflow through the entire front surface of the radiator. Now I know what you're thinking, it's probably like, well, it's in the rear mount. You got a rear mount radiator, so is it really that important in a rear mount? Well, if you look at most cars that have rear mount radiator setups like this, they almost always have some sort of NACA ducting going to the back of it. So, for example, I'm going to have two 3-inch NACA duct tubings coming off this quarter panel, and that's going to go into here or here, wherever this shroud is, or this firewall is built up. I'm also probably going to do quarter panel NACA ducts like I had on my GTO with two more 3-inch tubes. 4 3-inch tubes on each side of the vehicle, and then we will also be doing a roof scoop, which will have 2 additional 3-inch tubes going to the back of it. In total, we're going to have 10 tubes going to that firewall, getting good airflow to it. Now, if you seal everything off properly, just from the fans running alone, you can actually see a good amount of airflow going into those. This setup will not be nearly as noticeable as the GTO was, because the GTO had a full shroud in front of it with all the ducting going to it, was completely sealed off. So when those fans were on, it pulled air right into it. This one is completely open up top, so we can pull air in through the top with the fans as well. It's just adding a little bit of extra airflow into the radiator, and it's always a good thing to have. We did like 2 pusher fans on the front of this radiator here. The issue we would have is we'd have to run a really low clearance, so we'd be running 2 smaller fans as well, and with them being that close to the radiator, they're basically going to only blow air through in the spots where the actual fans are. Not the most efficient way to cool it. You get much better efficiency by creating an entire area, an entire low pressure area for that air to travel through. Now, generally, they say, I don't know who they are, but from what I've read, puller fans are about 20% more efficient than pusher fans. I have no data of my own to personally back that up, but from the standpoint of creating airflow from high pressure to low pressure and having a sealed unit, it definitely makes a lot of sense. So if you're considering doing pusher or puller fans, I'd highly suggest doing a good shroud sealed with puller fans on it. To help out with that, it's always good to make sure that you have your radiator ducted properly and sealed off properly for any incoming airflow as well. You can see next to the radiator, I do have some plates put up, or like a kind of like a little shield put up right there. You can see it right down there. Sides not on there right now, but you can see where the piece actually bolts on up in there. Oh, hey, there's that light. I was looking for that. Right there, and then there's another bracket up top here where it bolts on. It actually creates kind of like a funneling effect to any air coming in through the ducts or through the top. It'll want to push it right through the radiator and follow that low pressure current into the air box and out the back of the fans and then out the back of the car. So if I had to give three little tips for doing fan mounting and how to route that stuff, number one would be make sure you have puller fans on a shroud and that it fits tight to the actual radiator. If it doesn't fit tight, make sure you tape it up and seal it really well. Number two would be to make sure that you have it sealed off to the face of the radiator, so any front air coming in is directed towards the radiator. So if these weren't here, there's a lot of air that's getting gonna get passed up and go right past the side of the radiator. So you want to make sure you have good channeling to the front face of the radiator. And number three would be to make sure you have a good amount of airflow coming in. So we have this whole top section open here, and on top of that, we're gonna have an excessive amount of NACA ducting, bringing airflow in this way. So yeah, that's just a little bit of advice on doing fan stuff and cooling, and thought I'd throw that up there for anybody that is looking for that kind of information. But that's going to be it for this one. So like the video if you liked it, subscribe to the channel and follow the build along, and I will catch you guys later.